I am about to say something that might sound a little harsh. Are you ready? Most of the unhappiness I have seen in women my age has nothing to do with illness or bad luck or circumstances beyond anyone's control. It comes from habits, specific, identifiable habits that quietly chip away at independence, joy, and the quality of daily life over months and years, until the damage feels like simply how things are, rather than the result of choices that could have gone differently. I know this because I fell into several of these traps myself, and I know it from watching women I care about fall into them. Women who are capable and vital, and who gradually became less so, not because of anything that happened to them, but because of patterns they had settled into without noticing. Patterns that felt harmless or even reasonable until you looked at where they led. This is not a comfortable video to make. I would much rather talk about kitchen organization and morning cleaning routines, which is my usual territory and which I genuinely love. But this topic has been sitting in my mind for months, and I think the most useful thing I can do today is say what I actually see, rather than what is easier to say. These are the 8 traps. If you recognize yourself in any of them, I want you to hear that recognition as useful information rather than as criticism. You can see something and then change it. You cannot change what you cannot see. Trap number 1, handing over your decision-making and calling it help. This one starts with something that looks like kindness on both sides. Your adult children offer to manage things, to handle the finances, to organize the medical appointments, to make the decisions about the house or the routine or the daily life. And it feels like relief at first. Less to think about, less to manage. Someone else carrying the weight. What happens next is the part that nobody talks about clearly enough. Every decision you stop making is a capacity that begins to atrophy. The brain, like the body, stays capable through use. When you stop being the person who decides how money is managed, the confidence and the competence that managing money requires begin to fade. When you stop being the person who planned your own week, the skill of planning your own week quietly diminishes. When someone else always answers for you, the habit of speaking for yourself weakens. I watched this happen to a woman I knew for years. Sharp, capable, entirely competent. She moved near her daughter to make things easier, and gradually, over about 3 years, handed more and more of her daily decision-making to her daughter's household. By the time I saw her a few years later, she seemed genuinely uncertain about her own preferences. She would look at her daughter before answering simple questions about herself. The independence she had possessed so naturally was gone, and she had not noticed it leaving. The small things matter. Cook your own meals when you can. Manage your own spending. Plan your own time. Not because accepting help is wrong, but because the habit of doing things yourself is what preserves the ability to do things yourself. Receive help when you genuinely need it. Do not accept it as a substitute for exercising the capacities you still have. Tell me in the comments, have you noticed yourself deferring to others in ways that have gradually become the default rather than the exception? I think this one is more common than most of us admit, and naming it is the first step toward reversing it. Trap number 2, treating isolation as peace. I understand the appeal of quiet. I am a naturally quiet person, and I have lived alone for nearly 10 years, and I genuinely love the solitude of my home. But there is a difference between solitude you choose and isolation that simply accumulates. And I think many women mistake the second for the first. Isolation accumulates when you stop initiating, when you wait for people to call rather than calling first, when you decline invitations often enough that the invitations stop coming, when the week passes and you realize you have not had a real conversation with another person in 4 or 5 days, and you feel vague about how that happened. This is not chosen solitude. This is the slow shrinking of a social world, and its effects on mental and physical health are genuinely serious. I am the one who calls. I have talked about this before. Being the one who initiates contact, who suggests the coffee, who keeps the friendship alive through consistent reaching out, is not something I particularly want to have to do. I would prefer that it were more mutual. But I have come to understand that if I want connection in my life, I have to be willing to be the one who creates it, regardless of whether others are doing their share. That asymmetry is occasionally frustrating and consistently worth it. One phone call, one visit suggested, one letter written. These things are not large, but they are the difference between a week that includes genuine human connection and a week that does not. And the difference between those 2 weeks, accumulated over months and years, is the difference between a life that includes joy and one that is slowly losing it. Trap number 3, deciding that stillness is the safe choice. I am not going to repeat everything I said in the fitness video about movement and its importance. What I want to address here is the specific mistake of interpreting the way your body feels after a period of inactivity as a signal that more rest is the right response. When a body has been less active than it should be for weeks or months, movement is uncomfortable. The joints complain. The muscles tire quickly. The effort required feels disproportionate to what is being attempted. This discomfort is real, and I do not want to dismiss it, but it is not a signal that movement is wrong for this body. It is a signal that this body needs movement more than it has been getting, and that the first efforts will be uncomfortable until the body remembers what it is capable of. The choice to rest more in response to physical discomfort is understandable. It is also, in most cases, the choice that makes the original problem worse rather than better. The muscles that are not used become weaker. The balance that is not practiced becomes less reliable. The joints that are not moved become stiffer. Each of these changes makes the next day's movement slightly more difficult, and the accumulation of that dynamic over months is significant. 10 minutes of gentle movement in the morning, a walk that is slightly longer than the last one, a garden task that requires getting down and getting back up a few times. The specifics matter less than the direction. Consistently toward more movement rather than toward less. Before I continue, a quick word. If you enjoy this channel and want to support my work, just look directly below the video player, right next to the subscribe button, and click the button that says Join. That is how you become a Smart Organizer. Smart Organizers members get exclusive videos, a loyalty badge in the comments, and custom channel emojis. I would love to have you there. Trap number 4, refusing to learn new technology out of principle. I want to be gentle with this one because I think the resistance to technology among women of my generation is often genuine and understandable. The pace of technological change has been genuinely disorienting. The assumption that older people cannot or will not learn to use technology is genuinely insulting. The design of many platforms and devices is genuinely not made with our age group in mind. All of that is real. And it is also true that refusing to engage with technology at all, as a matter of principle or pride, has consequences that are not primarily about the technology itself. It is about what the technology provides access to. The ability to video call Daniel and see the grandchildren's faces rather than just hearing their voices. The ability to make an appointment online without being placed on hold for 40 minutes. The ability to read what I want to read rather than what is available at my local library. The ability to stay connected to information about the world rather than depending on what happens to be on the television. These are not small things. They are forms of access and connection and autonomy that matter genuinely. Learning one new thing at a time is completely sufficient. One specific application, one specific capability, practiced until it is familiar before adding another. This is exactly how I learned to use the video calling on my phone, which now allows me to see Daniel and his family in a way that a phone call simply does not replicate. It took longer than it takes someone 20 years younger. It did not take as long as I feared. And what it gives me is worth significantly more than the effort it required. Tell me in the comments, is there a piece of technology you have been resisting that you think might actually be worth learning? Tell me what it is and what has held you back. I find these conversations useful, and I suspect the answers will help other people reading along. Trap number 5, letting your living space become a source of burden rather than peace. This one is closest to the work I do on this channel, and I want to include it here because I think the connection between how a home is managed and how a person feels is more direct than most people realize. A home that has accumulated more than can be managed comfortably, where surfaces are covered and rooms are difficult to navigate, and cleaning requires moving many things to reach the things underneath, produces a specific kind of daily low-level stress that is felt rather than consciously identified. You know the feeling. You walk through the house and something registers as too much, even when you cannot name exactly what it is. You sit in a room and instead of feeling at rest, you feel surrounded. The opposite is also true. A home that is managed in small, consistent daily acts, where surfaces are clear and movement is easy and things are in their places, produces a quality of daily calm that is genuinely health adjacent, not luxury, not aesthetics. A settled environment that does not demand management simply to function. I tend to my home every day in small ways. This is not a burden. It is the reason the house is the calmest and most consistently clean it has ever been in my entire adult life. And the reason I come home each day to a space that feels like rest, rather than another set of things that need attention. The habit of daily small maintenance is what produces that. And the daily small maintenance requires far less total time than the periodic large efforts it replaces. If your home has become a source of stress rather than a source of peace, The path back is not a single large overhaul, but a consistent small practice begun today and maintained daily. One surface, one corner, one decision at a time, until the accumulation of those decisions produces a home that works for you, rather than a home you are constantly working against. Please subscribe if you are not yet subscribed. Every week I share what I have learned about maintaining a home and a daily life that genuinely supports well-being at this stage of life. Trap number 6, neglecting your own health out of consideration for others. I have seen this pattern so consistently in women of my generation that it almost deserves its own category of human behavior. The tendency to prioritize everyone else's health and well-being so thoroughly and so automatically that our own becomes genuinely secondary, not as a temporary sacrifice, but as a permanent default. The appointment that was scheduled and then canceled because something came up for someone else. The medication that was not taken consistently because the routine was disrupted by someone else's needs. The food choices that were not made thoughtfully because it seemed like too much effort to cook for one. The sleep that was sacrificed because someone needed something in the evening. Individually, each of these is a small thing. As a pattern sustained over years, it is the systematic neglect of the person whose health and longevity matters to everyone who loves you. Taking care of your own health is not selfish. It is the most practical and most loving thing you can do for the people who depend on you to be well. A woman who is well is a woman who can show up for the people she loves. A woman who has depleted herself indefinitely in service of everyone else's needs is a woman who will eventually be unable to show up for anyone, including herself. Make the appointment. Take the medication. Sleep. Eat the food that feeds you rather than whatever is easiest. These are not indulgences. They are the maintenance of the person that everyone in your life needs you to remain. Tell me in the comments, is this one that you recognize? The tendency to consistently put your own health and needs at the bottom of the list? I think this is one of the most universal patterns among women of our generation. And I think naming it honestly is the beginning of something. Trap number 7, not setting boundaries with adult children and paying the full price for it. I talked about this in another video, and I want to revisit it here because I think it belongs on any honest list of patterns that diminish older women's quality of life. The specific dynamic of the older parent who cannot say no to adult children, who absorbs every request and every need and every imposition without protest, out of love and out of the deep discomfort of disappointing someone they love. The cost of this pattern is real, financial, physical, emotional. Resources that should be yours, including your time, your money, your energy, and your peace of mind, being consistently redirected because you cannot bring yourself to protect them. And the cruelest part of this pattern is that it often does not preserve the relationship it is designed to protect. The adult child who is never refused never learns to respect the limits that are not enforced. And the parent who never enforces limits accumulates a resentment that eventually poisons the relationship from the other direction. A clear, kind, firm boundary is not a failure of love. It is a structure within which genuine love can actually function rather than a road. I am not your endless resource. I love you and I have limits. Both of these things can be true simultaneously, and the relationship is healthier when both are acknowledged. Trap number 8, waiting to be fully ready before starting to live fully. I am going to end with this one because I think it is the most insidious of the 8 and the hardest to recognize in yourself. The habit of waiting. Waiting until the house is sorted. Waiting until the finances are clearer. Waiting until you feel more settled, more ready, more certain that what you want to do is allowed or appropriate or sensible for someone at your age and in your situation. The waiting is almost always indefinite. The readiness that would end the waiting almost never arrives on its own. And the things that are being waited on, the trip, the project, the friendship pursued, the interest explored, the version of life that you have been imagining from just slightly outside of it, these things do not happen simply because the waiting ends. They happen because you decide to stop waiting and begin. You are not waiting to be younger. You are not waiting for better circumstances than these. You are waiting, in most cases, for permission from some authority that does not exist and will never grant it. The permission you need is yours to give. The life you have been designing in your imagination while managing the life you are actually living is not out of reach. It is adjacent. It requires only the decision to stop treating it as something you will begin eventually and start treating it as something that begins today. This chapter of life is not the conclusion. It is not the slow fade from the version of yourself that was fully alive. It is a chapter with as much possibility as any of the ones before it. And the women I know who are living it most richly are not the ones who waited for the right moment. They are the ones who decided that this moment, imperfect and incomplete and exactly as it is the right moment. I want to hear from you now. In the comments, tell me which of these 8 traps you recognize most honestly in your own life. Not the one that feels safest to admit, the one that is actually true. Recognition is not failure. It is the beginning of the only change that matters, the one you choose to make because you can see clearly what needs to change. And please subscribe if you are not yet subscribed. Every week I share what I've learned about living well, keeping a home that supports you, and navigating this chapter of life with as much clarity and as much joy as it is possible to bring to it. I will see you next week.